Welcome.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you, Robert, for being here. How are you?
It's my pleasure. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Well, it's another day for AyAyAyAi, where I'm very excited about everything AI related, machine learning related, life in general related. And I have an awesome subject matter expertise in semiconductor chips and fabs. And I have my favorite guy in the world right now is Lucky, who's been talking about this AI machine learning with me nonstop. And he heard me say machine learning, AI, and hardware over and over. And Today's episode, we have somebody literally subject matter expert on the hardware topics and when it comes to AI machine learning. Because without semiconductor chips, there is no AI ML, right? Let's get that loud and clear, right? You gotta have semiconductor chips that is out of this world in order to be successful with AI machine learning.
How you doing? So my name is Robert Quinn. I am a LinkedIn semiconductor industry content provider. I'm somewhat of a social media influencer on LinkedIn. I have about 38,000 followers, and I've had about 8 million views last year on my LinkedIn. So I write and talk about the semiconductor industry. I have spent about 24 years working in the semiconductor industry as an engineer. And so I've traveled the world working on the coolest equipment in the world, from atomic layer deposition to chemical vapor deposition and all the different processes that we use to make these microprocessors. And it's been an incredible career. And we have a lot of things that we're working on in there and within the industry. But yeah, it's been good. I'm also the founder of a new nonprofit called Simu. Simu is a nonprofit organization that is bringing education and knowledge of the semiconductor industry to the next generation. We have some serious issues within the semiconductor industry right now. Right now, we have the average age for senior engineering in semiconductor is about 52 years old. And there are very few people in the pipeline. Everybody wants to be that software engineer right now. So there's very few people in the pipeline within the universities to fill those positions. And we are, everybody from Washington, D.C. to all the way down is looking at this as a very serious issue. We need to staff we're doubling the size of the industry in the next 8 years. And we're seeing these problems coming all the way down. From everybody from Washington, D.C. and all the way down is looking at this as a big issue. So I started a nonprofit organization to try to educate and excite the next generation about the semiconductor industry and bring that knowledge and fun to the industry and so that we can get these kids excited about working in the semiconductor industry to produce these chips that we're going to need to run the world.
Right. Sounds like Lucky, we have our guest that will have to return every week because we need to talk about this every week from now on. So Lucky, what do you think? Semiconductor chips.
Wow. Well, before I get started, I just want to say, ay.
Don't forget that.
Today is it's the first day of our podcast with the new guest of the year. So this is our first podcast of the year, and I'm really glad that you're here, and we're hitting off the year with somebody that's an expert in semiconductor chips, because the reality is there's a drastic shortage in chips, and we can't move technology without the hardware. And so I'm really excited, to have you on the show as a guest today on the podcast, and I'm really excited to learn about, what you have to provide today. So, I have several questions, but I know Asif, he's been waiting for you to be on this show, because we always go a little bit on the right to the side of the hardware. And typically we stay on the software side and we follow the OSI model somewhat. It's good to have somebody on the hardware side, on the physical layer. So welcome.
Love it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So without, further getting into it, so, tell us what you think, where we are right now in semiconductor chips, as far as what's going on in the White House with CHIPS Act, and then what's happening in the world. But we only have so much limited time. So, I'll let you start and give us your thoughts on all these topics.
There is so much going on right now. The industry is absolutely exploded in the last couple of years. Obviously, we went through COVID, which just amplified the industry and caused these shortages with chips. We have also I think we're just in the United States where we have about $200 billion of private equity being invested right now in the semiconductor industry. There's many more hundreds of billions of dollars being invested around the world. The semiconductor industry has just gone leaps and bounds in the last 2 years with lots of investment. There is new technology that's coming out. Obviously, you're in the AI world. I'm actually working with through my nonprofit. I also like to excite the kids about the technology and what we're working on in the semiconductor industry. And one of the most advanced chips that we're working on right now that the world has just produced is made by a company called Cerebras. And they make a single chip that is one wafer. It's enormous. It's the cut in a square, and it is 2.6 trillion transistors on a single chip. It's 7 nanometer technology, and it's going to be used for artificial intelligence and smart. Working with smart computers and artificial intelligence, but it is, I believe Dojo is using it. Do you know who Dojo is using?
Tesla's Dojo.
Yeah, I believe that they're using this design as well. But they're sending me a demo, so I'm super excited about that. I'm supposed to be getting it today, but I like to talk to these kids, and I show them this chip, this single chip that's this big, and I'd like to also display to them a transistor bulb. If you remember the transistor bulbs that we used to have in the 50s,
that was the grandfather of semiconductor chips.
Yeah, and that was a single transistor, and now we're putting 2.6 trillion transistors on a single chip. And we're making these transistors, the gates within these transistors are now, not that one, but some of the new technology that's coming out with EUV is 3 nanometers in size. That's 21 atoms wide. We're stacking atoms to make transistors. It's incredible, the new technology that's coming out and the way that it's coming out so rapidly and so fast. I was telling my kids the other day, my kids were like, oh, okay, 2.6 trillion transistors. I was like, okay, let me explain something to you. Count to 1 trillion. And they're like, oh, that'd take a long time. And they're like, how long do you think it would take to count to 1 trillion? Try 31,000 years. That's how long it'll take you to count to 1 trillion. So we're putting 2.6 trillion transistors on a single chip. To put that into perspective, it's mind-blowing. But there's so much that's going on with the industry, and we need to be able to excite this next generation to get them involved in this semiconductor industry, because this is going to run the semiconductor industry is going to run the world with all the new technology that's coming out. So I'm super excited about it because there's a lot coming out and a lot going on right now.
So the reason we say AyAyAyAi is to show our excitement about what's happening in the AI machine learning world. But at this point, I have to amplify my voice like how Lucky does it, right? Like, hey, you got it. Because everything you just said is so exciting and so to the point, because if we are developing AI machine learning, it's very important that not only do we develop this AI machine learning, but we have a buy-in from the users, buy-in from the people that will be impacted by that AI machine learning. So multiple times in this podcast, we've talked about digital natives and digital immigrants and digital refugees, people that have been negatively impacted somewhat by the digital revolution, people that are born into the digital world, and people like me who was a digital immigrant who had to convert everything from the piece of paper and writing into that world of digital PDF files, I mean, at one point in my life, I just never wanted to see PDF file ever again, but here we are still dealing with PDF. But, one of the ways to make the digital, the presence, whatever the presence you have, is either as an immigrant or refugee or as a native, is to make that digital experience so realistic, as in make it happen in real time. Right. And I dropped that PDF for an example because PDF is one of those obstacles in your daily usage of internet that brings that hurdle of like, why do I have to have PDF? Why do I have to have it on Microsoft Word? Why is it not all simultaneously happening in my laptop, right? It's because your data are so structured in a way that they cannot commingle, right? So if you have a 2.6 trillion data sets that are able to be processed, right? The word is process those data that you have in PDF, MS Word, or somewhere in the back of your laptop. If you're able to process all those data simultaneously, which is not 2.6 trillion, by the way, it is probably like few millions or billions, whatever the case is, you will have an amazing experience when you log into your laptop because your internet is fascinating. Now imagine your laptop is as good as your internet experience, right? You're able to do things simultaneously without having any interruption, right? That's what semiconductor chips is. So anybody who's listening thinking, what does semiconductor chips have anything to do with AI/ML? Well, first thing first, semiconductor chips will process the data for you, and how it processes the data, how much can it process once? Let me pause there. How much data can it process all at once is how it impacts your experience in either internet or in the laptop, right? Or your desktop or your supercomputer or whatever you have. Not everybody uses that much data all at once. We necessarily don't, but because of AI machine learning, because the AI machine learning has to provide you with the type of services that you're not experienced with, right? And I go back to the Iron Man example where you have Jarvis that is talking back to you just like a real person in real time, giving you real instructions and getting the real task done for you. So that Jarvis requires a whole lot of data processing. And when you have that data processing happening within that a small gate, right? Small gate of semiconductor chips, that gate cannot process that much information all at once. But if it does, then you'll have Jarvis. Then you have that ability to say, like, if I ask you a question, say, for example, Jarvis, Alexa, or Siri doesn't have to jump into the internet, go all the way to Silicon Valley, process that information, and get that back to you, right? It will do it on site, as in literally right in front of you. It will process that information real time in your device. As you can tell, my voice is like going high pitch at this point because I'm super excited about this topic. Because when you said 2.6 trillion, that is a number that everybody needs to understand, because that's how much data we will process simultaneously at once. Right now, we process tons of data, but 2.6 trillion is like a next level. So just to add more to everything you've mentioned about the size, we talk about 90 nm. And we just talked about 7 nm at this point with 2.6 trillion. And you also mentioned 2 nm. By the time you go past 2 nm, you don't even have a number to name it anymore. You're just pretty much saying it's a chip that is freaking out of this world. That's what we're going to call it. And that's what we're working on right now. Intel, right? In US, they're developing this technology, the fab, to build these type of semiconductor chips that you can just don't have to even number it anymore. Just call it the fastest chips you have ever invented since that light bulb that we used to use back in 50s, Yeah, let me take a breath there. That is a whole lot of information, but very good stuff,
I'm super excited about it. And the technology that we're using today to create these chips is incredible. We have a new technology that just came out. So I say just came out, it's the last 5 years. There's a technology called EUV. And EUV we kind of reached a bottleneck in the semiconductor industry when we were down to like 5 nanometers. and they really couldn't get past, it was 5 to 7 nanometers. They couldn't really get past that, and they couldn't figure out how they were going to continue to follow Moore's law and, you know, and bring the sizes down smaller, until a company, ASML, came out with a new EUV tool. And EUV is an incredible technology. It's the way that this tool is amazing, but it allows us to bring it down to, they said EUV will allow us to bring it down to 1 nanometer. And then beyond that, we change architecture, and we start doing, you know, 2D, 3D, you know, packaging, where we're stacking chips, and we're doing other architectural changes to be able to increase the productivity of the chips. And so and so that's another technology that's really interesting. But I work with these kids a lot. I just recently actually I took 10 high school kids to the University of Texas lab, the MRC lab at University of Texas, and that was really fun. We got to go in, we got to sit down, talk to them about semiconductors and explain how cool they are. And then we took them into the lab, and we, you know, showed them all the equipment. We, you know, started up some tools, struck some plasma, showed them what the plasma looks like, and it's fun. I during the classroom time, I kind of sit down and I explain to the kids. I say, listen, this equipment that we're working on, it pumps down to a vacuum that's 10^-9 nanotorr. That's equal to deep space vacuum. Then we're injecting a plasma that's as hot as the surface of the sun. And then through different processes like physical vapor deposition, atomic layer deposition, and chemical vapor deposition, and all these different processes that we do to make these chips, we're now able to make these gates at 3 nanometers. And so I explain it to them and kind of put it into their perspective of what is 3 nanometers. Okay, that's 21 atoms wide. What is 10^-9 nanotorr mean to you? It's deep space vacuum. Everybody knows what those mean. And so they, it kind of gets them excited about the industry. But this equipment is super neat. It's really fun to work on, and I've spent my career working on this equipment. And I was working at a fab here in Austin, and we have a row called $1 billion row, because that row of tools is $1 billion of equipment. They are very expensive, and I believe the new EUV tools are $350 million around there somewhere each. And so they're the cost of these fabs and the amount of money that it takes to run these facilities is incredible. I think Samsung Austin, that they're going to build in Austin, is going to be a $20 billion facility.
I was just about to hit on that.
$17 billion.
Yeah. Because when ASML provides you with the semiconductor chips maker, they're sending you a pod or a booth that is like, the size of a truck, like semi truck, right? So, once they drop it off and then you're building your, semiconductor chips, it's not all happening at one place. There's so many different logistics happening. And that's what gets me so excited, the supply chain planning of it, the supply chain management, the supply chain difficulty, the supply chain nightmares, right? All the supply chains behind semiconductor chips is amazing. And we are developing the semiconductor chips sooner than later in US, right? We have Samsung, like you said, in Austin. We have Texas Instrument up in Sherman, where we are in Dallas, Texas. And then Idaho, Ohio, Arizona for Intel, right? These are some promising aspects for the next 5 years to come. But what I would like to point out as it's happening is that if we don't, let's just slow down this AI/ML revolution talk right away, because you cannot have AI/ML promises fulfilled in next years to come without the semiconductor chips being highly innovative and way ahead of its time, because there's a supply chain nightmare and the supply chain management that needs to happen, and it needs to happen within states, not overseas. As in, if you have an AI machine learning capability that you are developing, but you need a semiconductor chip specifically manufactured for that, you cannot rely on India or China to manufacture that for you 6 or 7 months later. You have to design that that AI ML semiconductor chips and have that manufactured next day over, so a engineer can drive his Prius to that fab, and pick it up, right? And say, we have it. We designed it yesterday, and within 3 days or 3 months, we have our developed semiconductor chip, right? That is being built on ASML pod. Describe a little bit about the fab process. I think a lot of people are aware of manufacturing plants, but they don't really call it a fab. Describe a little bit about the fab process.
So the one part of that is that the semiconductor industry is so intertwined globally. I was just in Germany last month. I'm flying to Oman next month. There are so many things going on around the globe. It is so intertwined. These cell phones that we carry every day, I think if you broke it down to like the minerals that are within your cell phone, it takes about 25 countries to produce that cell phone. Everything from the neon gas that's used within the semiconductor industry, that's largely comes from places like Ukraine, to magnets that come from China. The semiconductor industry is greatly hinged on a global network of countries kind of coming together and being able to work together to be able to make these chips. Now, the technology is highly hinged on the American technology and how we're trying to be the leaders of the world as far as developing this technology and being able to. But right now, as we sit, the only people that can produce a 3 nanometer or a 3 nanometer technology is TSMC in Taiwan. They are building the Samsung fab will be an EUV fab. The TSMC fab in Arizona will be an EUV fab. So all these, we're building the fabs in the United States right now, but unfortunately, it will take a little bit longer than people think to build these fabs. We're looking at about 4 years to be able to get these fabs up and running, because another thing is that you can buy these machines, you can put the equipment inside of it, and you can start running all this equipment, put the people inside of it, and spend the billions of dollars to get it up and running. Now you have to perfect your recipe, because every one of these machines has a very specific recipe. So companies like Samsung, who are getting into the EUV industry, are going to have a bit of a learning curve. Obviously, companies like TSMC, who have already perfected doing this smaller technology in Taiwan, they'll be able to duplicate what they're doing in the United States and get it up and running a lot faster. But the fab industry is very, it's incredible, like how we're going, but there's many different aspects to it as well. You hear about there's different divisions. And so you think about the divisions of power semiconductors. Power semiconductors are large technology. It's old technology. But they're now producing. We found a problem with silicon. The problem with silicon is that whenever you apply too much heat to it, the electrons start jumping across gates and they start doing funny things. So we've started using more a different technology called silicon carbide, SiC, and gallium nitride. These two technologies will definitely revolutionizing the power industry, and it has a vertical growth for the next year. Some things like memory and some other industries within the semiconductor world will see ups and downs throughout the next year because of what we're going through economically around the globe. But the power semiconductor industry that's driving the automotive industry, the electric vehicle and the automotive industry is vertical. They will see vertical growth. There's companies like Wolfspeed you may be familiar with. They're going in 100% into silicon carbide, and this new technology will be great for the semiconductor industry. It's kind of it's old. The architecture that they're using is old architecture, and we haven't, just the process of being able to use silicon carbide, they've just now kind of perfected. And so that's one of the reasons we haven't used it in the past, because it had many hurdles to overcome. They found this new substrate called silicon carbide and gallium nitride, but now they're really perfecting it. And if you look at just think about 5-8 years ago, whenever you bought a Apple computer, you got a giant brick, right? A brick that plugged into a wall that was a power adapter. Now you have this little square box. Why is that? Because they're using new technology like gallium nitride and silicon carbide because of the heat, the way that it dissipates heat. Obviously the best substrate, the best semiconductor substrate is diamond, which is also being used as well. I had an interesting interview with a guy named Adam Kahn, who is the founder of Kahn Industries, and they are making diamond semiconductors. It's incredible. But you think of stuff like space and things that will go into the upper atmosphere and those types of things that will be widely used for the diamond is very good at being radiologically hardened. And so there's a lot of different areas that the semiconductor industry falls into, and a lot of people say that, I wrote an article the other day about the semiconductor industry in general. They're like, you can't do that because it's so individualized. Everything's, you have your power semiconductor sector, you have your memory sector, you have your processor sector, you have a lot of different areas of the semiconductor industry. But I kind of try to look at it as from a 30,000 foot view and write about it from a 30,000 foot view than individualized areas. Because there is so much going on in the industry. So we will see some fall in the semiconductor industry, and some consolidation, I think, within the next year, because of the way that the global economics are going right now. We're already seeing layoffs in some companies that have been announced, and that'll continue. So
it just seems that what I've seen, what little I know about semiconductors, and I'm more on the the AI on the software area, but what I've learned is that the US has become more of a safe haven for a lot of these companies to move their chip producing at least to the US because of and I don't want to get into politics, but at the end, you're not going to run into geopolitical issues in the US as more of a safe haven to be able to produce your chips and continue to produce. Even I think Mexico has been identified as an area to produce chips. And they're trying, I think the president now is trying to, speak to some of the chip manufacturers and say, hey, you know what, Mexico can do it too. But other than that, I mean, my big question to you is, in the semiconductor industry and how they're producing and innovating, is it more, because right now it seems like, and me just understanding the industry, it's everything still binary. We're still producing to a binary world. What is the innovation more in what we're trying to produce with AI and trying to produce what we currently have with the standards, or the innovation coming in quantum computing and quantum systems? And I don't know if there's a difference there within the CPUs or the chipsets. I mean, is there a major difference between what we would be seeing in a quantum world versus what we're going to be seeing in the AI current standard world that we're operating in? Well, how's that work?
They'll all be very different. There's going to be, obviously you still use the same processes for making those things, right?
Mhm.
You're still going to have physical vapor deposition. You're still going to have to use an atomic layer deposition and physical vapor
Mhm.
deposition and different chemical mechanical polishers to be able to make these chips for all the industries. But they do have very different architectures and different styles. For instance, there's something called FPGA, field programmable gate arrays. It is essentially an open source chip that is formed by the software. So you upload a software package to hardware and it forms the hardware of the chip. So think about it. You launch a chip into space, you upload a software package, and you change the physical hardware of the chip. So that's kind of a new technological thing that's coming out that's going to be a big deal, because if you're familiar with what's going on with IoT, the Internet of Things, there's going to be over 1 trillion IoT devices and by 2035, somewhere around there. That's going to be incredible to try to keep up with, especially when from conception to market is about a 3-year process. And being able to, FPGA will be able to cut that in about half, to where you have just an open source FPGA chip, and the guy is able to, you have a designer that's able to code a software package to it and then just upload it to your IoT device, and then boom, your IoT devices is compatible. You don't have to go to a fab and have a specific chip designed and then manufactured and everything. They can just generate millions of these FPGA chips that are programmable, and able to change there. So you have a lot of different, there are a lot of different things going on. You have FPGA, you have quantum computing, you have different power semiconductor computing, you have all these different types. But yeah, there's very many different sectors, and they're very are they still connected? Yes, I say they're still kind of connected within the semiconductor industry, because they do use the same processes
Mhm.
of making the chips, but they do use very different architectures and very different styles of doing them. So yeah.
If I may, I want to just maybe take the risk and just put it out there that uh, because of this bottleneck that we're experiencing, where we want to get to the other side of the bottleneck, one of the solutions that we might need temporarily or even permanently is to go back in time and start using analog system in order to supplement this digital semiconductor chips with an analog system that's going to be able to, if my dream comes true, which I hope it does, is that these analog systems will actually provide these local IoT devices with capabilities that it doesn't have right now. And that also kind of plugs into that idea of, okay, why do you need better semiconductor chips than previous ones? Because of your energy consumption. Energy consumption that you have with your AI machine learning. If I may give one example, would be that to train AI machine learning to the level of, say, something like GPT-3 will require vehicle usage of 3 to 4 families of their lifetime. As in, that's how much gas or energy we will use in order to train a large language models for AI machine learning, right? So that's lots of energy that's being used to teach certain models, which is bigger size models, to perform to the level of ChatGPT, GPT-3, and Stable Diffusions, right? So lots of energy is going into it. So that's why we need that bottleneck to have the supplement of an analog system that doesn't require as much, but it actually is possible. Well, let me actually use that too, right? Digital system is binary, zeros and ones, where the analog system is most likely 99% right, but it tries to correct itself as it tries multiple times. So when you have a zeros and ones and then 99% chance of getting it right, you get somewhat of that AI machine learning, which is actually the human-like performance. As in, we as a human, we're not zeros and ones. We're not 100% confirmed. We're always 99% confirmed. We just perform with most accuracy and high confidence, right? So that's the analog side of machine learning, or analog side of semiconductor chips, right? To supplement the digital semiconductor chips with something that doesn't use a whole lot of energy, but is able to perform to the 99% effectiveness, right? And come up with a different variable each time, right? I just want to throw that out there because energy is what's going to cause the most conflict, as much as conflict that we're talking about today with semiconductor chips being built not in India but in China. But China is banned from using semiconductor chips according to the U.S. regulations, and anybody that does business with the U.S. for semiconductor chips will not be working with China on their semiconductor chips. So you have this geopolitical conflicts that are coming up, but this geopolitical conflict will be stalemate, sort of a geopolitical conflict, unless we can figure out how to reduce the energy it consumes when it comes to using AI machine learning, or when it comes to having quantum computing laboratory being built in, let's say, somewhere in Massachusetts, Boston, right? Yeah, I think there's a whole lot to talk about, but we are getting to that exciting piece of, like, hey, where are we right now? What's happening? What's possible? But when we start having AI machine learning come up front to the, let's say, social media, like you see social media is blowing up about ChatGPT. Everybody's talking about AI machine learning, how cool and effective it is. Yet we need to start thinking of what's in that layer 1, right? Layer 7, OSI model, everybody loves it. We see layer 6, we see layer 7, everybody loves it. But what's happening in layer 1, where that actual device is sitting and computing all this data and providing layer 3 and 4 with their effectiveness, energy, hardware, these sort of conversations we need to have more and more of, because when you say $200 billion being invested into the semiconductor chips industry in the US, well, we need more, right? We need more of these investments to come in, so that way we can figure out a system, a research and development system that is able to say, you want to build semiconductor chips, we cannot wait 3 to 4 years to create a fab, to create a process where we can deliver the semiconductor chips on time, right? We need to have a way of saying, yeah, semiconductor chips, we got it. Just like an iPhone, we'll build it tomorrow, right? We want that research and development to happen. And I think more we discuss this upfront with, I guess, people that will invest, people that will design it, people that will join into the conversations down the road as a student, say like, I'm a ninth grader, I'm interested in writing my papers on semiconductor chips. Those are the kind of involvement we want. We want more people to get involved in layer 1, right? To get more out of the research and development, more effectiveness, more energy, sustainable energy, right? That's the keyword I'm looking for. To have this involvement with brains that, is able to develop the next level of semiconductor chips, not in 3 to 4 years, but 3 to 4 months, right? Design it in Arizona, build it in California, design it in California, build it in Texas, wherever it is. That a bubble of semiconductor chips we need to develop needs more investment, more people to learn about it, more people to engage and start helping to do more research and development on it.
Definitely. The industry will continue to grow. Artificial intelligence, I think, is going to drive the semiconductor industry greatly in the next 12 months. I think we are going to see a huge shift towards AI. And with this shift and the amount of data collection that is going to come into play in the next 12 to 24 months is going to be, I think that they're underestimating right now what the amount of data that they'll need, and the amount of chips in the servers that they will need to be able to keep up with what they're doing right now. I think it'll be incredible trying to keep up with that. So
I have a question. Who do you think is the big boy, the 500-pound gorilla right now when it comes to producing AI and also having an edge in producing chipsets? Because the first person I can think of right now is Tesla, because they're the they seem to be producing actively. There's a lot of different vendors or manufacturers producing or producing AI or AI models, but it seems like they're the ones actually also producing chipsets, and it seems like they have an edge in the industry. But I don't know. I mean, that's just a consumer perspective.
Yeah.
Who do you see really, driving the industry?
I mean, there's companies like Cerebus that's working on the hardware technology for artificial intelligence. But I recently did an interview with Dr. Naveed Shawani, the CEO of Rapid Silicon, and he said he was recently in China, in a certain district of China where it's very high tech community and a lot of industries where he was at. He says every fifth company that he was walking down the street, every fifth company was an artificial intelligence company. He said he was absolutely amazed. And
Wow.
so there's areas that are being heavily invested in. Obviously, countries like China are investing heavily into artificial intelligence. And then you see a lot of companies, like ChatGPT doing really well, and a lot of big companies jumping on that train, trying to, Microsoft just, threw in billions of dollars into ChatGPT, and what is the other one? It's Deep Brain. Is it Deep?
Deep brain, Google, right? The one of the Google deep learning, deep brain. I think that sounds about right. The Google one, correct?
Yeah,
Google deep brain. Yeah.
yeah. They're going to, all these companies that are kind of hiding in the woodwork right now, they're going to come out big, I think, and fairly soon.
Well, I think if we can draw a picture here, the buzzword here is AI machine learning, but between the layers is NLP, right? It's that ability to communicate without keyboard, communicate straight to your laptop, communicate without really having that hesitancy of, did my computer understand me or didn't understand me, and the responses are completely out of whack, right? That revolution has already started, because now we're talking about, we ask a question to ChatGPT and ChatGPT is able to perform to a level of satisfaction, which is, a lot of people think it's boundless, but it does have its perimeter. It does have its limitation as far as how it can effectively produce an answer, right? So be it answer, be it coding, be it writing you an Excel sheet, be it drawing you a picture on Stable Diffusion, they all have their boundaries. But the thing is, it's performing to the level that, what do you do next? Right? Once you have ChatGPT, now you start speaking into it. Now it speaks back to you just like a human will. And that's that Alan Turing's definition of what artificial intelligence is, that you're able to communicate with the system and not even realize there's actually a system that's communicating, not a person, right? That's the Alan Turing's test of successful measure of what an artificial intelligence is. So NLP, that communication piece, it will require these sort of semiconductor chips, because not only is it the fastest semiconductor chips, but also one that we can widely manufacture, as in manufacture for mass use case, right? As in, we can put that semiconductor chips inside of your Siri and Alexa. We can manufacture that enough to say, you can have it on your IoT device that just hangs on the wall all the time. Really, it doesn't really do anything else other than take temperature of the room, right? You will need to manufacture for all the IoT devices that we just talked about, right? So the communication piece of it, all the devices are able to communicate with each other and perform to the level that you don't feel the latency, right? That's what we're working towards right now, and that's what needs to happen over time as we see these investments that are coming in, right? Once a system is able to communicate, it goes into saying, tell me what you see. Well, I see this. Where do you see it? Well, I see it thousands of miles up in the space. I see a star, and I can describe that star to you without you ever being there. But you can trust me, the information I'm giving you is the correct one, right? Because the latency is so low, and our ability to communicate with the system becomes just like a normal routine, like the way we use our cell phone, right? When we reduce the energy consumption of these systems, now we get to do more of the hardware that is, smaller, almost invisible, right? If I can have a VR set on my eyes and I'm able to see the laptop in front of me, the only device that I have is a VR set. And forget the VR set, we might have augmented reality just on your phone, right? Your phone is able to project a bigger screen for you, and you're able to see what's in front of you without ever using a monitor. So you are reducing the energy consumption, not only by semiconductor chips, but also all the devices that you have to charge every 8 hours to 24 hours, right? So those are out of equations. Those IoT devices requires very little amount of charging, and you're using them without really plugging them in and charging them every 8 hours, or having them plugged into the wall where you need electricity all the time. It's changing the whole aspect of society. And I love that idea, that the fact is, we are at the cusp of it. We will experience this in our lifetime. So that's all I have to say.
Are you familiar with the edge computing?
That's exactly my favorite topic.
Yep. That's a big one, right? And we're no longer having to transmit this data from your Alexa all the way to some server somewhere, all the way back. Now we have the edge, where we're able to store that data and a lot of that information, and it doesn't have to, you're reducing the amount of data that has to be transferred in the distance and everything else. So
data that has to be processed, data that has to travel, right? Data in motion, data at rest. Now you reduce the data at rest because you've taught an intelligent system on how to perform without using all those data that's at rest. Because having data at rest also means you have to have a data center that is always connected to the electric grid. And that's a whole lot of electricity. We can talk about this all day long. I guess we have to make a plan for like an 8-hour long podcast just to
well, excited. Something we haven't covered, and we've started adding to our podcast, is discussing, recent events, something new. And something I did see recently, which was interesting, was, and it touches on what you just covered, Asif, is they're producing a new contact that you can place in your eye, like a regular contact, and it gives you, when you look outside of your peripheral, it gives you the perspective of a screen and a digital output. And they're working on the semiconductors and the chipsets to be able to power this thing. And this new technology is just, it's unbelievable. You take a contact and all of a sudden you're injected into whatever, system you want to be, whether it be some kind of network or a virtual instance of a network, but you can now connect with the contact. And I thought that was amazing. To have chipsets, we have a hard enough problem trying to get a contact in our eye that's a regular size, And so I could see that easily moving to a glass, a version of a glass, maybe like glasses, but the technology is there. And I've tried using other things like, I'll give you a bad example. Ray-Ban came up with the glasses that would you could take pictures. They had a little camera. And the thing with that is you only had limited time of usage time, maybe an hour and a half, and then the thing was done. It had little speakers, but to know that at some point we're going to have chipsets that could go into a contact is just mind-blowing, and we're going to all be there. And the way I see it, they're producing it now, so you figure 3 years, like you said. So in 3 to 5 years we'll have that aspect, and it'll be normal.
Yeah, the Google Glass might come back, and who knows, maybe it'll be better than how Google Glass disappeared, only less than a year later, right? Google has a lot of failed product, but Google is the ultimate source of all the energy used in machine learning and AI, because they have lots of AI machine learning that, they utilize in their data centers. I think that if it wasn't for the heat, right, the heat issue that the chips will heat up, you can have chips anywhere in your body. Matter of fact, there's a camera that uses AI machine learning that is so small. What it does is actually takes a somewhat of a decent picture and makes it just very effective, right, by using AI machine learning to fill up all the missing pixels of the picture, the camera. And the camera is supposed to go inside of your body. So it doesn't necessarily take the picture that you see, but it utilizes the AI machine learning to fill up all the gaps in the fuzziness, right? To say, like, whatever picture you see, you might not see that through the camera, but through the software and AI machine learning, you'll be able to actually see the picture the way it's supposed to be seen. One example of that is when we saw the black hole for the first time in 2021, right? The picture that we took, it was not a single camera looking at a single picture, right? Or a single black hole. It utilizes, I think, about 28 different hard drives, right? From all over the world. Bringing those 28 hard drives together and creating a single picture where it actually captured a black hole in action. That's a similar theory, is that what goes inside of your body is the camera. It takes a picture and it utilizes AI machine learning to put this picture together for a way to a doctor to confirm what they're theorizing, right? Could be a cancer or not a cancer, or could be a bone damage or whatever the case is. Just a whole lot of possibilities coming through the pipeline right now, and these are all going to bottleneck somewhere, and that bottleneck is most likely, well, I'm very confident it is semiconductor chips.
The and like you said, a medical technology will just be revolutionized with AI, and the medical hardware that we're going to see coming out will just be absolutely amazing. We're going to see a big change in how we use medical technology and how it's going to affect our lives greatly. We will see people living longer. We will see diagnoses being diagnosed very early, or super early stages that couldn't be done with the human eye, and it will require artificial intelligence to be able to find to put those diagnoses together. But these new hardware, the new hardware they're going to be using, that are going to be created through all these semiconductor chips, using these semiconductor chips will be big changes in the future, in the near future. I was listening today to something. Somebody said that I believe he said 8 years. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did you hear that before? That 8 years artificial intelligence surpasses the human as far as intelligence. Is that right?
So the calculation that I think is similar is that it will take over about 87 million jobs, right? As in, artificial intelligence will take over 87 million jobs that people will not need to perform anymore. But in order for that to happen, there will be 97 million AI machine learning jobs that will open up in order to have that happen, right? Just like you will have devices that will disappear in front of your eyes because you no longer need them, because the semiconductor chips that you have on a single device will utilize all the different IoT to make your life as comfortable, if not more comfortable, than what it is today. And the jobs will, slowly disappear. And I'm not talking about jobs that are like, minimum wage or someone like that. We're talking about lawyers. We're talking about doctors. We're talking about nurses. We're talking about high level paying jobs, even CEOs, right? I can bet on that, because I really believe all the AI machine learning we're developing is to develop decision-making capability. And CEOs are known for decision making. And if you can have the best decision makers in the room, and that is not a human, CEOs are replaceable as well, right? But to add to that equation, what I will say is that AI will most likely take your job if you're not that guy who's working with an AI, right? So if you're working with AI and you're helping that AI to do its job, you are more likely to be more in control of your career than somebody who's not working with an AI. As in, you have no boundaries with AI. As in, you don't collide with an AI to say either I'm going to help the AI to develop, or AI all of a sudden just shows up and takes your job. And I think it's happening slowly, but that exponential point will hit once we get to the semiconductor chips that are being installed for edge computing purposes. Right, that's going to happen sooner or later. And is that what you're kind of going into? Is that what you're trying to bring up?
Well, I mean, so kind of in reference to what you're talking about, we need 400,000 people in semiconductor alone, right? I mean, just the semiconductor industry and the explosive growth that we're going to see in this industry in the next 10 years will be incredible. But definitely. And kind of going back to what you were talking about earlier, we were talking about the growth of the semiconductor industry. we see a lot of people always come to me and they say, oh, we're going to have too many chips. We're building these fabs all over the world and there's just going to be too many chips made. Do we see a glutton of chips and too many chips being produced? Maybe for a little bit, but whenever you take in this to consideration, this whole digital thing going on with digital currency and data collection and artificial intelligence data collection and all these other things that we see going on, there's a huge demand for chips. We're going to see a growth. We're adding a fab and building a fab in Austin, Texas. We're building a couple of them in Arizona. We're building one in Ohio, where Micron just committed $100 billion in New York. We're seeing, this is just the United States, Germany and Europe they're all adding fabs. India is adding fabs. Everywhere is building fabs around the world. But do we build all these fabs and then have, with the growth of this industry, I think in 5 years we finished building these fabs. In 8 years, we're going back saying we need more fabs. Because right now there's this big demand right now. Everybody's saying we need more fabs. We need more fabs. Hurry, let's build these fabs so we can produce these chips. And they will, in 8 years from now, we see that happening again. And it doesn't stop.
Now, what do you see? And this is coming from the left side. Now, we have a good idea of what semiconductors are and what they can be, and at least innovation. You can clearly see. But what do you think about? And I know this is coming way. A few iterations. I can't remember when. I remember reading something about a chipset that was designed from the human brain. They're using neurons to produce chipsets, and they were alive.
Yeah, neuromorphic.
I'm sorry?
Neuromorphic computing.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
It's wild. In fact, it was pretty cool going to UT. They were talking about some of that at University of Texas when I was out there. But it was funny. It's still kind of a black hole. I was just in Munich, Germany. I was sitting at the CEO roundtable. So I'm sitting there listening to all these CEOs talk. And somebody brought up the neuromorphic computing, and all these CEOs looked at each other and go, what's that?
Never mind.
They had no clue what it was. And these are the CEOs of the biggest billion-dollar companies in the world, like semiconductor billion-dollar companies in the world. But I was fairly surprised they knew nothing about it. But neuromorphic computing is definitely it's using the same architecture. Now you can do it hardware and biologically. You can use the biology of really using brain tissue with neurons and using it that way, but it's really copying using an architecture that copies the way that our brain synapses works. Mm-hmm. and being able to use it that way. But there is actually they're actually using one of the tests and ways that they're trying to figure this out is using real brain tissue and figuring out if they can use this for computing. And so, but mostly right now, the growth in neuromorphic computing is in the hardware, that is in the architecture that you see the synapses and the way that we're able to utilize our brains. They're trying to use that similar architecture within that hardware.
I remember reading something about it and how they went from brain matter and then they went to skin to where they could get what they needed from the biological neurons or something to be able to create the synapses. And they tested it and they proved that the biological chip had an edge over the chipsets that we had now. They would actually learn faster. Yeah. They built up the connections to play Pong faster than the actual chipset. And I thought that was amazing. I was like, look, we win anyway, but it's cool to see. It's cool to see how that, that's just edge. That's bleeding edge. I know, but it was such an interesting read for me. Yeah.
And they'll keep trying to move that way. Mm-hmm. I'm sure. And we'll continue to hear more about that. Yeah. I think it's kind of definitely on the very edge of, this is a little bit of Star Wars kind of thinking right now, but there's a lot of possibilities of how that's going to change in the future. But yeah, it's wild to think how and the brain is the most efficient. It's all about efficiency, right? And being able to have those electrons, and the way that those electrons work in the brain is absolutely the most efficient way of doing it. And so if they can mimic that, why not, right? And find ways to utilize that.
This is some incredible stuff. So tell us, are you excited about AyAyAyAi? There you go. That's the AyAyAyAi. So with that, I cannot thank you enough for joining this conversation. I mean, like I said before we started this podcast, we do it for entertainment for me and Lucky, but it's because we are very passionate about this topic, right? Because technology, wherever it's heading, will be there, right? Regardless of what direction it goes. But as a steward of technology, we want to be able to pass on the right information, good information, and frame that information in a correct method and ways. So that way, there's some reality behind it. So we're not just going all over the place trying to say Terminators and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Will Smith is coming, trying to take over the world, right? With that, I'm going to sign out with AyAyAyAi because I'm still excited.
It was great. It was great seeing y'all. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thank you. I've learned so much, and I don't know if I lost my enthusiasm, but my brain's a little exhausted after this one. And thank you.
It was good.
See you guys in the next episode.
AyAyAi.